Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Saturday. Welcome to the program. We have two great guests. We have Governor Ron DeSantis and Victoria Coates, former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump in his first term, and Heritage Foundation National Security Vice President. But before we get to our great guests, I understand Rand Paul, who's been in the Senate now for some time, he says, look, all we're doing is spending ourselves into oblivion. Tom Massey in the House has never seen a budget he likes, and he talks about that too. And, and I have some sympathy for them, but I don't understand them. I don't understand them. In fact, I don't understand members of Congress, many of whom have been there many years, some of them decades. I don't understand them. Why doesn't Congress fix it? Ladies and gentlemen, there have been a handful of us and over 5 million supporters and activists who've been talking about this for 20 years. That Congress can't fix itself. It's incapable of it. First of all, the Republicans have a bare majority, so they can barely agree on anything. Secondly, the Democrats have never seen a budget that wasn't bloated, out of control, massive debt that they didn't think was too small. So how do you fix this? You really can't. We have elections. They tell us they're going to. They don't. Why? Because they can't. Even this Congress today didn't create the situation that it's in. It took decades of Congresses. And then to blame Donald Trump, look at the spending, look at the taxing, look at the debt. You got people, as I said, who've been in there. They're in their 70s and 80s. They've spent their whole life in Congress. And Donald Trump is going to be a two-term president, and then he's gone, and then the next president comes in. How do we fix this? They don't really tell us how we're going to fix this because they can't. We can. Just like with the federal judges. We're sitting around waiting for the Supreme Court, which probably will cut the baby in half, if not worse. Oh, are they going to fix the lower court judges? No, but we can. How? Well, there's a couple of methods. Number one, elect the right people to the House and the Senate who can control the courts, eliminate some of the courts. That's what the framers intended. But we talked about that already. So what about this massive bloated budget and this debt that's going to suck us in? And everybody really expects Donald Trump to fix this like that? When he doesn't have a Congress that will do it? When the Democrat Party's fighting for the complete opposite? No. The framers were concerned about this. And they told us what to do about this. And I want to remind you, oh, yes. I wrote an entire book on it called The Liberty Amendments. Well, Mark, you write books. I mean, we can't remember. I get it. And then I'm here to remind you. The Constitution gives us the answer to so much about our government, particularly when it's tyrannical, it's out of control. The Constitution itself provides the means for restoring self-government and averting societal catastrophe, or in the case of societal collapse, resurrecting the civil society, or in the case of massive spending and debt that can destroy a society, it can help us with that too. What am I talking about? Your Constitution, Article 5. Article 5. That is a very, very important article. Tell me, when is the last time you heard anybody on TV, other than me, talk about Article 5? When is the last time you heard a member of Congress talk about Article 5? Almost never. Article 5 sets forth the two processes for amending the Constitution, and the second of which I want to emphasize, which has never been used, and yet, importantly, is there. Here's what it says. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to the Constitution, or, on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of the Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by Congress. The only way the Constitution has been amended so far is you get 2/3 of both houses of Congress. They agree on language. They send it to the states 3/4 of which ratify or don't. That is, the legislatures. But there's the other method. The proposal comes out of the state legislatures. 2/3. And then they have to ratify it by 3/4, just like before. So there can't be a runaway convention because it's the same ultimate ratification number as the first method. The difference is who initiates the amendments. Ladies and gentlemen, do you think Congress is going to propose reforms to reform itself when it won't reform itself? The answer is no. Now let me get into this a little bit more deeply with you, because that's what we do here. Importantly, in neither case does Article 5 amendment process provide for a constitutional convention. It provides for two methods of amending the Constitution. The first method, where 2/3 of Congress passes a proposed amendment and then forwards it to the state legislatures for possible ratification by 3/4 of the states, has occurred on 27 occasions. The second method, involving the direct application of 2/3 of the state legislatures for a convention for proposing amendments, which would thereafter also require 3/4 ratification vote by the states, has been tried in the past but without success. Today, it sits dormant, except for our movement Convention of States, in which quietly, steadily, about, I think, 24 state legislatures, give or take, have approved certain limited amendments that would address the issues that we're debating right now in Washington. But I don't think there's a news reporter or news organization that has said a damn thing about it. The fact is that Article 5 expressly grants state legislatures significant authority to rebalance the constitutional structure for the purpose of restoring our founding principles should the federal government shed its limitations, abandon its original purpose, and grow too powerful, as many delegates in Philadelphia and the state conventions had worried it might. The idea was first presented at the Constitutional Convention on May 29, 1787 by Edmund Randolph, governor of Virginia, as proposed in the so-called Virginia Plan drafted by James Madison. And here was the resolution at the Constitutional Convention from Madison's notes. Resolved that provision ought to be made for the amendment of the Articles of Union whensoever it shall seem necessary, and that the assent of the national legislature ought not be required thereto, the Congress. On June 11, George Mason of Virginia, who had earlier drafted Virginia's Declaration of Rights, the precursor to the Declaration of Independence, one of the great delegates, really under-acknowledged as far as I'm concerned, responded to some of the delegates who did not see the necessity of the proposal by strongly advocating for it. He was the main force behind it. And as Madison's notes reflect, Colonel Mason urged the necessity of such a provision, the plan now to be formed with certainty, be defective, as the Confederation has been found on trial to be. Amendments, therefore, will be necessary, and it will be better to provide for them in any easy, regular, and constitutional way than to trust to chance and violence. We need a way to amend the Constitution. Otherwise, the only way to deal with this will be through violence and so forth. It would be improper to require the consent of the national legislature because they may abuse their power and refuse their consent on that very account. So in other words, this was Mason's argument. He said, wait a minute. If we just rely on Congress to be the initiator of amendments, we're going to have a problem. What if Congress is corrupt? What if they're out of control? What if they spend too much? The state legislatures need to get involved. Later, when the delegates returned to the issue, Roger Sherman of Connecticut, who'd been a member of the Committee of Five, which helped draft the original Declaration of Independence, and who co-authored the so-called Connecticut Plan, which served as the basis for our bicameral Congress, he offered an alternative in which Congress would propose amendments and the states would ratify them. Madison suggested dropping the state convention altogether. So we got the first part of Article 5. Okay, the Congress will make the proposals. Supermajority, 2/3 of both houses, in the same exact language and proposed amendments, going to the state legislatures, where they would have to approve 3/4 of them by their legislatures or a convention in the state. But they ignored James Madison's point. On September 15th, right before the end of the Constitutional Convention, just a couple days, George Mason gets up on the floor of the convention, alarmed that Congress would have the sole power to propose amendments, continued to insist on state authority to call for conventions. Mason explained that an oppressive Congress would never agree to proposed amendments curtailing its own tyranny. Now, what did he say exactly? Madison's notes. Colonel Mason thought the plan of amending the Constitution exceptional and dangerous, as the proposing of amendments is in both the modes to depend, in the first immediately, and in the second ultimately, on Congress. No amendments of the proper kind would ever be obtained by the people. If the government should become oppressive, as he verily believed would be the case. And Gouverneur Morris of Pennsylvania and Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts moved to amend the article so as to require a convention on application of 2/3 of the states. And so then we got the second part of the amendment process. So Mason basically said, whoa, hold on, boys, we're not shutting down this convention until we get this language in the Constitution. That's how important it was to him. And they agreed to do it. Earlier, Pennsylvania's James Wilson, among the most active participants in the Constitutional Convention, had moved to insert the words 3/4 of before the word several states, which was also adopted and then ultimately added as a requirement for both amendment processes under Article 5. So, under both amendment procedures, the Constitution requires that 3/4 of the states ratify amendments either by their state legislatures or state conventions. And this part, the second part, where we the people have a say through our state legislatures, bottom up rather than top down, has sat dormant. Dormant. And you know what's interesting? Presidents have referred to it. Madison referred to it once. They have referred to it. Eisenhower referred to it. Others referred to it. We even had the Republican leader in the Senate at one point, Dirksen of Illinois, referred to it and recommended it. Milton Friedman, the great late economist, referred to it. Ronald Reagan had referred to it. Now nobody refers to it. All they do is beat their chests. Oh, we should do this and we should do that, and I'm voting no. Do something about it. In Federalist 43, Madison considered both Article 5 amendment processes equally prudent and judicious. He wrote in part that useful alterations will be suggested by experience could not but be foreseen. It was requisite, therefore, that a mode for introducing them should be provided. The mode preferred by the convention seems to be stamped with every mark of propriety. It guards equally against the extreme facility, which would render the Constitution too mutable, and that extreme difficulty, which might perpetuate its discovered faults. It, moreover, equally enables the general and the state governments to originate the amendment of errors, as they may be pointed out by the experience on one side or the other. And so it was a great feat to be celebrated, he argued in his Federalist paper, in order to convince the states to ratify the Constitution. You have the power to propose amendments too. But we don't do it. So what can we do? I want to continue to support this Convention of States movement. It is a massive movement. It's the biggest movement in America that's never discussed. It's never reported on, not by conservative media, not by conservative websites. I mean, maybe in passing. But there are millions of activists. And that's how we've got nearly 24, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. State legislatures already agree to this and to agree to certain provisions. I proposed in Chapter 5 of the book 2 amendments to limit federal spending and taxing. You see, ladies and gentlemen, Congress is not going to limit spending. I don't think that's an unknown reality. Congress is not going to limit borrowing. It's not going to do it. So I said, let's have a spending provision and let's have a taxing provision. They go hand in glove. These are proposals. They're not chiseled in granite. Section 1, Congress shall adopt the preliminary fiscal budget no later than the first Monday in May. It's June now. Why the first Monday in May? Because that's what they used to do. But they're incapable of doing it right now. For the following fiscal year, and submit said budget to the President for consideration. Why so much time? So we, the people, have some ability to look at it. And the President and the administration has some time to review it too. Section 2, Shall Congress fail to adopt a final fiscal year budget prior to the start of each fiscal year? Continuing resolutions? No. Should Congress fail to do what it's supposed to do, which shall commence on October 1, that's their fiscal year, of every year, and shall the president fail to sign said budget into law, so if he chooses, or she, not to sign it, an automatic, across the board, 5% reduction in expenditures from the prior year's fiscal budget shall be imposed for the fiscal year in which a budget has not been adopted. So a fiscal gun, if you will, is pointed to their heads. You better get this done. President better get this done, but you better get it to the president, get it done in time, or automatically there's a 5% cut across the board. Section 3, total outlays of the United States government for any fiscal year shall not exceed its receipts for that fiscal year. Now, as you'll learn in a second, I propose this amendment going into place in 4 years. Maybe it could be 6 years, whatever it is, so you have time to build to it. But at some point, you got to get to a balanced budget. Section 4, total outlays of the United States government for each fiscal year shall not exceed 17.5% of the nation's gross domestic product for the previous calendar year. So I am tying, as Milton Friedman suggested half a century ago, and brilliantly, you tie the growth of government to the growth of the GDP. The GDP doesn't grow, the government doesn't grow. If it does grow, you still limit it to how much it can grow, but it can grow. Section 5, total receipts shall include all receipts of the United States government, but shall not include those derived from borrowing. My fear was they'll just start borrowing money and pouring it in. No. Total receipts exclude borrowing. Total outlay should include all outlays of the United States government except those for the repayment of the principal debt. Why? Because you got to pay the debt or the system collapse. Section 6, Congress may provide for a 1-year suspension of one or more of the preceding sections of this article by a 3/5 vote of both houses of Congress, provided the vote is conducted by roll call and sets forth the specific excess of outlays over receipts over the 17.5%. Section 7, the limit on the debt of the United States held by the public shall not be increased unless 3/5 of both houses of Congress shall provide for such an increase by roll call vote. First, these things need to be in place to limit the spending, to limit the borrowing, and limit the taxation, and so forth and so on. Then you need a supermajority to raise the debt limit. Our problem is the debt. Section 8, the amendment shall take effect in the 4th fiscal year after ratification. It could be the 6th, the 7th, the 5th, whatever it is. And then it has a companion taxing amendment. Section 1, Congress shall not collect more than 15% of a person's annual income from whatever source derived. Person shall include natural and legal persons. Section 2, the deadline for filing a federal income tax return shall be the day before the date set for elections to federal office. You elect people, and it ought to be fresh in your mind that you just paid a lot of taxes. Section 3, Congress shall not collect taxes on a decedent's estate. You die, that money belongs to your family. You have a farm, you have a ranch, you have a small business, you have a few homes. That's it. The government had its take when you were alive. No inheritance tax. Section 4, Congress shall not institute a value-added tax or national sales tax or any other tax in kind or form in order to get around the raising of taxes and the limitations. No other taxes. Section 5, this amendment shall take effect in the 4th fiscal year after its ratification. In other words, combined with the other, it could be the 6th or 7th. Okay, I'm not saying this is perfect, pretty damn good. There can be other proposals. But look, if we're serious about getting this under control, there are ways to do it. The framers gave it to us. We're just not serious. I'll be right back.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.